Today, I am joined by a powerhouse team of our very own Washington, D.C. insiders, and they are going to help us see some projections of the current political landscape and give us an outlook for the upcoming year. Welcome to the podcast, Dwayne Musser, NRCA's Vice President of Government Relations, Terry Dorn, NRCA's Director of Political Affairs, and Brad Stein, NRCA's Director of Federal Affairs. Welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so first question I have, and I think we're going to start with Dwayne here. What are the top priorities for NRCA during the second year of the administration?
Well, thank you, Crystal. It's great to be here from broadcasting live from NRCA's Capitol Hill office in Washington, D.C. Basically, the first major priority for NRCA is to deal with advancing our agenda on workforce development policy. We've known that workforce development has been a long-running challenge for the roofing industry and is going to continue to be, to say the least. And we basically have three subcomponents of workforce development policy that we're going to be focusing on. Number one is supporting more funding for career and technical education programs. And we're really pleased to see that support for this among both Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill, bipartisan support does seem to be growing. There was a hearing that we attended a few weeks ago back in December, a subcommittee hearing on Capitol Hill to review career and technical education policy. It was clear that both Republicans and Democrats want to see more investment in CTE programs, which are really important. We've seen some success with our members over the past number of years, but we want to do more in that area. The one challenge there is budgetary. We're asking for more funding, and as many of you know, the federal government has some very difficult budgetary challenges with growing budget deficits, so there is a tendency for Congress to look for areas to cut spending, but we want to continue to push ahead and emphasize the need for greater levels of investment in career and technical education. Then the second area, the second subcomponent of workforce, is reform of the Workforce Innovation and Policy Act. And this is a federal law that provides funding to state and local governments for workforce training and other career services for basically targeted at hard to employ individuals to get more people into our workforce. We've seen some success with our membership over the last number of years, but generally speaking, those programs don't seem to be operating all that effectively, but we've identified some reforms and we worked, this is another area where there's good bipartisan support. We've worked with both Republicans and Democrats to draft legislation which has broad bipartisan support to implement reforms that we think will really increase the access of these programs to help our members with their workforce development strategies. That legislation was nearly passed Congress in 2024, and we're hoping to move forward in 2025. It was put on a back burner a little bit due to some other priorities, but we're hoping to make progress on that in 2026. And then the third basic subcomponent of workforce policy is immigration reform, and that's has some different challenges. There's not nearly as much bipartisan support or agreement with respect to immigration reform, but there are two bills that we're working on. We have made some progress in 2025, and we're going to continue to make it a priority because it's still very, very important and even growing, the need for reform within our industry. So again, workforce is going to be front and center. And I know Brad then has also some other areas.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Dwayne. I mean, our second major priority is sort of a new area for a focus for NRCA, which is supporting legislative proposals designed to address the significant affordable housing crisis in the U.S. We think this is an issue that unites our entire roofing industry and is very timely given the current, the national focus on affordability in general. So it's a big issue. We're very encouraged with reports that Congress is actually considering moving a major affordable housing package in 2026. We go back to the bipartisan issue there, so that's really good news. So as a result of that, NRCA is closely monitoring numerous bills, such as the Revitalizing Downtowns and Main Streets Act, that would provide a temporary tax credit of 20% of qualified expenditures attributable to converting older commercial buildings for residential use. And another bill, the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, that would incentivize private development by creating a federal tax credit that covers the cost between building or renovating an existing home in some urban and rural areas and the price at which that home can be sold. The bottom line, the roofing industry can play a significant role in efforts to provide safe and accessible housing, and we must do so. We must do our part to highlight, this aspect with policymakers, and we intend to do so in 2026 and beyond that. So we're excited about that opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. It's a lot of wonderful things, a lot of things that really, really matter to our industry. Okay. So what are some of the, and I know Dwayne mentioned a little bit of this, but what are some of the major federal policies that could affect roofing contractors during the coming year?
Sure. It's a great question. I mean, I think we have to start with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which was passed by Congress in July of 2025. And we saw a slew of sort of positive impacts, with the pro-growth tax provisions in the bill. So, for example, on the individual pass-through entities side of things, the qualified business income pass-through deduction, or better known as the Section 199A of the tax code, was made permanent at the existing 20% rate. Also, the top individual tax rate was locked in at 37%, and the corporate tax rate remains at 21% permanently. The OBBB also included a permanent estate tax exemption of $15 million for single filers and $30 million for those married filing jointly, which is critical for many family businesses. Also, the bill fully protects the SALT or the state and local tax deduction for businesses. So really, really big deal there. And on the direct business side, Section 179 of the tax code saw an increase of the maximum amount that can be expensed, including for roofs and other qualifying non-residential real property, to $2.5 million. And the phase-out threshold was also increased to $4 million. And both of these are actually going to be indexed for inflation moving forward. So there will be sort of slightly different numbers as we move forward with that in that aspect. In addition, deductions to domestic research or experimental expenditures paid or incurred are now permitted. In small businesses with average gross receipts of $31 million or less will generally be allowed to apply this change retroactively to tax years beginning after December 31st, 2021. It's important to know also, while we had many wins in the OBBB, as far as tax provisions, NRCA members also need to be aware of some of the energy efficiency and renewable energy tax incentives that are now being phased out. And so if that's important to your business, I encourage you to get a hold of, the DC office at NRCA, and we can sort of walk you through those changes. But those are some of the things that are going to be phased out starting in 2026 and beyond. So we need to be aware of that.
Yeah, I imagine there's quite a few people that could affect.
Yeah,
so, okay.
For sure.
Yeah. And then there's also another major area is we touched on immigration in the previous question, but immigration enforcement is certainly going to be front and center in 2026. We, of course, saw the Trump administration come in 2025 with a focus on increasing and expanding immigration enforcement. We're seeing that today very much so. We expect it to continue. And we have at NRCA provided updated resources for our members to be aware of when immigration enforcement actions happen, such as I-9 audits or work site visits by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, so that our members know exactly what they need to do. They need to have a plan in place ahead of time in order to be able to know how to handle these very difficult situations that can arise sometimes. So I would certainly urge all members, if they haven't already, to get that information from our website and be familiar with it. And we are going to continue to push both Congress and the administration to enact balanced reforms and reasonable immigration enforcement. But there is a real impasse there, and the administration seems committed to moving forward. So it looks from right now, barring a big breakthrough, that there's going to be the status quo kind of from what we've seen recently prevailing there.
Yeah. Okay. So in our first question, we talked a little bit about you would just naturally mention some of the things that you have a lot of bipartisan support on and other things that you may not. So overall, though, what are you hearing on the Hill? Will there be any meaningful effort by the lawmakers to work in a bipartisan way? Do you think that there will be on a lot of different things?
Yeah, yes and no. How's that for a
Mhm.
response from Washington D.C.? There's going to be efforts. There are efforts underway with respect to lawmakers trying to work on a bipartisan basis. However, it is really, really difficult for a number of different reasons. I mean, first of all, we just know just generally, our politics are more divided than they've ever been. So, okay, that's kind of out of the gate. Number two, we're entering an election year. Traditionally, in my entire career, it's always been more difficult to get things done in an election year. In years past, a lot of times you had a few months or the first, 3, 4, 5 months of the year to get things done, and then it went into silly season before the elections. Now it's kind of the whole year and sometimes even the whole 2-year Congress. And so in election year, it's always difficult. And then the other thing that is going to make it especially difficult in 2026 is Republicans in the House, where most bills start. Republicans who are in the majority have a very, very thin majority, razor sharp. They only have really a 2-seat majority right now. We actually just saw last week, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene resigned from Congress. So that deprives Republicans of 1 vote on a temporary basis. And then unfortunately, last week, we saw a Republican member of Congress, Representative Doug LaMalfa from California, unfortunately passed away very suddenly. And so there's another vacancy in that seat, and that's another vote that Republicans lose. And Democrats there are a few Democratic seats which are currently vacant, but they're going to be filled in the near future, one at the end of this month in a special election. So whenever those in the majority, in this case, Republicans and Speaker Johnson, it's just very, very difficult to get all of your members lined up on a particular issue, especially all the controversial issues we dealt with. So it's going to be really tough to get things done in 2026. As I mentioned earlier, we are confident, or not, I shouldn't say confident, we're hopeful, and given the track record of some of the workforce issues we've worked on, there's good bipartisan support there. So we have a decent chance of making some progress, but it's going to be difficult.
One other issue, sort of, I already mentioned the affordable housing package that could be potentially moving in Congress during the first half of 2026. We're also hearing more and more from our members on rising healthcare costs that are impacting their businesses. And healthcare policy could also see some bipartisan activity, particularly as pressure builds on Republicans, especially those in swing districts, to actually do something about skyrocketing health insurance premiums. But as Dwayne mentioned, some of these issues can be very polarizing and becoming very political. And so any bipartisan effort on the healthcare side will be difficult, in midterm election year. The last thing I'll say, what we're sort of, in the next couple of weeks, we'll get a really early test of bipartisanship in the second session. Because if you remember, they set a January 30th deadline for the appropriations bills to be passed. If you recall, last year we had the longest shutdown in U.S. history. It was around 40 plus days, and that was largely over healthcare, oddly enough. But when they cut the agreement, they set a January 30th deadline for all the rest of the appropriations bills to be passed by. So in theory, they have until then, or government runs out again. So I think we're going to get a really early test, early example of the bipartisanship, and if there is going to be any this session here in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Okay. That's a lot. And healthcare is so big right now with everyone.
Absolutely.
I mean, just across all industries, all sectors. So yeah, that'll be a huge thing to see what happens.
When you join NRCA, you're getting access to exclusive training, legal support, technical resources, and strong advocacy in Washington, fighting for your business, your workers, your future. Join the crew. You belong here.
Okay, so let's talk about the regulatory environment. What does that look like moving forward? Are there any new compliance challenges that contractors might face this year?
The overall regulatory environment looks pretty good. I think that's a bright spot for our industry right now in terms of the Trump administration, generally speaking, when in particular thinking about the Department of Labor and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which is really areas where impacts our industry. The Trump administration is pursuing a generally deregulatory environment, and we don't expect any problematic rules coming out in the near term. And we do, in fact, expect that the Trump administration will, in fact, repeal some regulations that have been somewhat problematic over the years. Possibly in 2026 could take longer to do that because these regulatory issues always take a while. One area where we're going to continue to be really focused at NRCA is the OSHA's heat rule for indoor and outdoor workspaces. That's been an issue that's really been front and center for us because of the potential huge impact on our industry. I think we really started working on that back in 2021. The Biden administration came out with a draft rule at the end of Biden's term in 2024, which was really problematic in a lot of respects, despite our efforts to mitigate those problems. That has not gone forward. We do expect the Trump administration to move forward in some way, shape, or form, but we think there's a chance to really make that rule practical for our members. And a bright spot for us is that the new head of OSHA, who just took office in late 2025, is a guy named David Keeling. And I worked with him a little bit on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's OSHA subcommittee that deals with OSHA policy some years back. So I'm a little bit acquainted with him. And we think that gives us a really good opportunity to go in and work with OSHA on making sure that rule is going to be practical for our members. Outside of that, I don't expect huge impacts from regulations on the roofing industry.
Okay, well, that's positive. What is the outlook? Let's talk about tariffs because that's fun. What is the outlook for action on tariffs and international trade policy in 26? What does that look like?
Sure, that's tariffs. I guess to sum it up, there's still a lot of uncertainty. There's been a lot of uncertainty on tariffs in 2025, and we're going to have probably more uncertainty in 2026. We may get some additional certainty when the Supreme Court acts. As members may be aware, the Supreme Court is currently reviewing the tariffs, the so-called Liberation Day tariffs that President Trump issued last April. Most of them took effect in August. But these were the tariffs issued under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. IEPA is the acronym there, in case I use that again. And so tariffs had never been issued under that law before. And the Supreme Court, due to lawsuits filed by various American players, is reviewing whether President Trump, in fact, had the authority to issue those tariffs under that law. And we expect that Supreme Court decision is going to come out any day now, actually. If the Supreme Court strikes down those tariffs as being unconstitutional, then basically those tariffs are going to be wiped out. And probably, it's not clear, but probably most or all of the revenue collected from those tariffs is going to have to be refunded to those entities who paid the tariffs. And that's generally U.S. importing companies. And that could be fairly chaotic. Then the other aspect, if the Supreme Court rules against those tariffs, is that we do expect the Trump administration to move forward with reissuing a lot of those tariffs under other trade laws, more traditional trade laws. The Trade Expansion Act of 1962, that's Section 302, and then Section 301 of the Trade Act of 74. Now, in order to issue tariffs under those provisions of law, they have to do investigations on certain trade practices before they can move forward with tariffs. But I know we do know that they're planning on doing that, and a lot of that's already in the works. Again, if the Supreme Court strikes it down. If the Supreme Court does not strike down those tariffs, if it withholds them, they'll stay in place. And I would think that most of those tariffs will stay in place for the indefinite future, although they could be modified or even removed, depending on whether the Trump administration negotiates free trade agreements with various countries where those tariffs are in place. So fair amount of uncertainty, although we may get more certainty soon once the Supreme Court acts. But that's certainly something that our members want to stay focused on. You want to be making sure you evaluate your supply chains, trying to find other suppliers if you're affected by tariff increases or the tariffs that have been in place now for some months. Also, escalation clauses in your contracts and whatever other risk mitigation measures you can develop. But tariffs are going to be with us in some way, shape, or form for the foreseeable future, certainly in 2026.
Right. And just the description that you gave there of what's going to happen, even if there's some sort of positive resolution that we find, this could go on into 2027. Like, this is not an easy fix to something.
Yeah, I mean, the tariffs are a core, between immigration and tariffs. Those are, I think, we're also getting into lots of foreign policy stuff with this administration, but with President Trump. But the core focus for President Trump is immigration and tariffs, and they're going to be around for the foreseeable future in some way, shape, or form. Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So with everything that we've talked about thus far, you guys are obviously in the everyday minutia of all of the policies and the bills and the laws and all the things that really affect our contractors, all of our members. You can see firsthand what their voice and them speaking up on certain things would do. And so what can roofing contractors, what kind of encouragement can you give? What can they do to have a stronger voice in Washington?
Yeah. Great question. I know Terry's chomping at the bit to sort of follow up and answer on some of this, but I'll first just say, a plug for Roofing Day in DC. I'm 3 months into this job, but I'm very familiar, on the association side, how important your fly-ins are, right? When you're bringing members, your association members into DC, and sort of be able to speak it with one voice on certain issues, and going to the Hill, developing relationships, meeting their legislators and their staff, and speaking again, to certain policies that are important to the industry. I can't underestimate. I can't sort of describe how impactful it is, right, and how beneficial it is to the industry. So the NRCA sponsors Roofing Day in DC every year. This year is April 14th and 15th. On average, we have about 250 to 300 folks attend each year. We've been doing it, just short of a decade now. It's representative of the entire roofing industry. So it's not just contractors, it's distributors, it's manufacturers. We encourage folks to bring field workers too, as well, to sort of share their story with legislators. So all that's very impactful. We've talked about some of the policy already, but we're going to be focusing on workforce challenges again in 2026, which Dwayne sort of, kind of touched on earlier, in affordable housing, which I mentioned. So those are going to be our two main issues that we take to the Hill, and educate lawmakers on that. And, the other thing that we do, there's networking opportunities, right? Which is great for folks to come in and share ideas and learn better business practices and all that. So there's great networking, and there's advocacy training involved as well. So we sort of teach folks how to advocate for the industry, because it could be intimidating, right? Going to the Hill and meeting with lawmakers and staff, it could be very intimidating. So we do a really good job of sort of training them up with, leading up to the event and at the event itself. And so, obviously registration just opened. And so, shameless plug wouldn't hurt, but certainly happy to answer questions, and folks want to contact, and members want to contact me or Dwayne or Terry about that event. We'd be happy to answer those questions. In addition to Roofing Day, I mean, we encourage sort of site visits. We want relationships to be built with our members and their legislators, really is what it comes down to. And a lot of times it's much easier for legislators to do stuff locally back home, right? And so we encourage our members to sort of set up site visits with their lawmakers or staff even. So that's something that we can help with. And then occasionally we do send out action alerts, right? Grassroots alerts to our members, encouraging them to contact their lawmakers on a specific bill or a sign-on letter of something of that nature that helps the industry. And we make it very easy for our members to fill those out. It's a couple links that they click on, and it takes them right to their congressman and their senator. So very important for that grassroots movement, right? To continue to do that as well. So, and Terry, I guess RoofPack is sort of a big thing in your eyes and in our association. So I don't want to steal your thunder.
Oh no, that's okay. Thank you so much.
That's a great segue to talk about RoofPack and the importance of it to NRCA's advocacy work.
Yeah, so as Brad talked about in talking about all of, your lobbying team, NRCA's lobbying team, our team being up on the Hill and the importance of when you go to DC for this Roofing Day in DC fly-in and meeting with your members of Congress and their staff, you can kind of get a sense of how important it is for us to be in front of them and sharing these priorities with them, firsthand. And so RoofPack is, your voice for the industry on Capitol Hill. It's NRCA's Political Action Committee. It's the only PAC dedicated to supporting the roofing industry's interests in Washington, D.C., and it's highly active in supporting pro-growth candidates for Congress. So funds raised support pro-business candidates, members of Congress we work with on different pieces of legislation of all of the, various issues we've talked about today. We raised nearly $175,000 in 2025, and we're quite successful as well. In the last election cycle, we saw a success rate of 96% for all RoofPack supported candidates on the ballot in November last time. And as we are in an election year right now, it's never been more important. So it gives NRCA's government relations team a megaphone to amplify these top priorities of our amazing industry to the nation's lawmakers. You've elected to be here. Relying on personal funds, we carefully and strategically support pro-business members and candidates. We work with members on both sides of the aisle, and we have trended more bipartisan in recent years. I want to say our 2025 breakdown is closer to 84, 16, 85, 15, and that has come more bipartisan. To support RoofPack, we raise funds through fun events throughout the year. We partner with, depending on when this comes out, with NWIR, the National Women in Roofing, to host our signature live auction reception during the IRE that's in Las Vegas. We also do a silent auction, both online and with items displayed in the booth. We have long valued our incredible sponsors of our IRE RoofPack events and our RoofPack events and activities throughout the year. We are very blessed to have such amazing support from our corporate sponsors as well as personally. We also host fund receptions during NRCA's mid-year and fall meetings, and we have donor clubs with exclusive perks. So check out nrca.net/RoofPack or reach out to me for more information. And I just wanted to say one last thing. It's also, another hat I wear. As Brad was talking about Roofing Day in DC, we are also very blessed with amazing support there between our industry partners and different folks who have been sponsoring Roofing Day in DC since its inception. So thank you all.
Yeah, all of those things are so incredibly important. And I think hearing from each of you helps take away some of the fear of getting involved, because I know, like you said, it can be intimidating. And I want everyone that's listening to hear, you have a team of people that can help guide you through all of that. So you have a voice and they can help you learn how to use it and use it in the most effective way. You are not alone in this. Okay, so one final thing to kind of wrap all of this up. What do you feel most optimistic about regarding the roofing industry and the current political landscape?
Two areas which are very positive and reason for optimism. First of all is tax policy. We've achieved a lot of most of NRCA's objectives with respect to really good, solid tax policy that allows our members to reinvest in their businesses. And we expect those policies to remain in place pretty much through 2029. and possibly beyond. Obviously, it depends on what happens in the elections. I think more so in both 2026 and 2028. But still, I think the current tax policy is going to remain in place through 2029 at least, and so members can focus on that and reinvesting in their businesses. And then, as I touched on earlier, we've really seen growing bipartisan support for more investment in career and technical education programs. We really see both Republicans and Democrats putting more value on the need to get more people into our workforce through trade schools and other programs, such as NRCA's ProCert and Pro Certification and track training programs. So that's another real bright spot where we're optimistic. Again, it's going to be tough to get some of these done in the current, right now, 2026, but we're always looking to build incremental progress, and we think we're going to have some more success with respect to career technical education in the coming years. That's really coming together nicely.
I love that. It's incredibly important. Incredibly important.
And if I could just add, again, I mentioned earlier, I'm a couple months into this job, so I came from a different association world, different industry, right? It wasn't trade focused by any means, but the thing that really has stuck out to me, in my short time here is just I think the way that legislators view, the roofing industry or the different trades. It's refreshing to see. And I'm maybe I'm a glass half full type of guy, but I think that relationship or the way that, policymakers view us, I think goes a long way in being optimistic, because I truly think our issues are bipartisan. And sort of Dwayne and Terry mentioned that. And so I'm optimistic and just in the fact that Congress wants to work with us. It's tough in an election year, maybe the timing, everything's sort of condensed, right? Because the midterm elections, people are going to be spending a lot of time back home, trying to get reelected, which I understand. But I just think that there's a lot of opportunities for us and for our members to develop those relationships and really educate those in policy. On the value of the roofing industry as a whole. And so, again, just optimistic from that perspective and sort of a fresh viewpoint, if you will. But I just wanted to share that.
I like that. Yeah, when you think about it that way, there's not one political party that needs a roof over their head and not the other.
Yeah, that's so true.
They all need
true.
it, So yeah, there is a way to link us then under that commonality.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anything else that you can think of? No? Okay.
I'm just excited to work with you.
No, this has been great.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I'm
the opportunity.
so thankful that you guys took some time to talk to us and to all of our listeners. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of Roof Talk, and thank you, Dwayne, Terry, and Brad, for all of the advocacy that you do for our industry. I hope you join us next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal, and see everybody at Roofing Day in DC
That's
in April.
right.
Yep. April 14th, 15th.
This podcast is produced by Told You So Media.
Told you so!